It's time now for Health Fitness Broadcast with Sherri, a show covering the hottest fitness topics and latest health issues. And now, here's your host, Sherri Horner.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the show and introduce our guest today, master trainer and fitness educator, also two-time Ironman triathlete and PowerBar Team Elite athlete, and a Swhinn cycling master trainer. Our guest today is Bethany Diamond. Bethany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk with you because you have so much energy to share with everyone, and you have a really great story. Not only are you a master trainer and fitness educator, but you have your own love of fitness, and we're going to talk about that soon too. So I was wondering if today we could talk about cycling, of course, since you're a master trainer, and also triathlons, which you compete in. So can we talk about those two subjects today?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Now, you've been in the fitness industry for how many years now?
I'm a dinosaur. I've been in this industry for over 25 years.
Okay.
Yikes. I've seen so many changes in this industry in that time.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? We go back to the old days where we dressed up for exercise class, so to speak.
Oh gosh, yeah, high impact aerobics, and carried our records, actual records around with us everywhere we went to teach class.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It was the good old days.
Great. Yeah, it's changed a lot.
So it's good to know that you're still hanging in there, and not just hanging in there, but you're still as enthused about the fitness industry as you were back then. And you're right, it has evolved. I mean, back then it was aerobic dance classes, and now the group fitness classes, there's so much variety. And one is cycling. So I was wondering if we could talk about cycling, indoor cycling, and not only is it a great way to get in shape, but it's a great way to train for people that do compete in cycling, like in triathlons. It's a good way for them to train during the winter
Absolutely.
season.
You know, I think indoor cycling is one of the only classes we teach that actually teaches us an athletic skill that we can use outside the classroom. There are people that take indoor cycling with no real objective except for to become fit or just to take a variety of class, and they become so enthused by the class itself that I've seen so many members of my classes become outdoor cyclists. Not necessarily competitive outdoor cyclists, but just outdoor cyclists, enjoying something that perhaps they used to do as children, and they're picking it back up as adults, whether it be recreational cycling, whether it be mountain biking, whether it be cycling with groups, or even training and taking part in centuries, which are 100-mile bike rides. And it's really exciting to see cycling increase both indoors and outdoors to the point where we're having legislation of bike lanes being built and people really aware of the fact that cyclists are on the road. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that indoor cycling became such an entity.
Mm-hmm. When do you remember when it became such a big deal, when cycling really burst onto the scene?
I think in the 80s. It started out in the 80s, believe it or not, and it came out, and it's evolved a great deal, as most things do, from being, you know, and I think it was always tried to be what it is now, which is a training program. And the interesting thing about the indoor cycling program is that in every city it's a little bit different, and every club is a little bit different. And some people teach cycling as if they were teaching people how to cycle, and some people teach cycling as it's a variety of workout where they do all kinds of stuff with really, really, really fast pedaling or standing up a lot or mostly interval work. Regardless of how it's taught, it is cycling. It's pedaling a bike, and because it's so simple in its basic use, anybody can do it. Whether my mother can be in the same class as Lance Armstrong, and if the instructor is doing a really good job of cueing the class, both of them can get a really great workout because they're on their own piece of equipment, doing their own workout, working to their own capability, and getting to their whatever their unique goal is in that class.
And the instructor is there to motivate them.
Motivate them, coach them, direct them, absolutely.
It's for all levels. Now, Bethany, I've seen people come out of cycling classes completely soaked. Their clothing is soaked in sweat. So let me ask you this. The more you sweat, the more calories you burn. Is that true?
I wish that were true. If that was the case, I'd hang out in the sauna.
Yeah.
All the time.
I'd be there with you.
Sweat is really, I know, right? Sweat is really a relationship to your environment. And the reason indoor cycling classes get so sweaty is because there's less air movement than if you were outside cycling. Mm-hmm. And usually they're pretty crowded rooms with a lot of hot bodies in them, working out really hard, and that creates a greater deal of sweat. And the real message here is certainly you're burning a lot of calories in a class like that, but the real message is because you are sweating so profusely, you really need to replace your fluids and possibly look to your electrolyte replacement.
Mm-hmm. Good tip. So let me ask you this. Is there an average for a 1 hour cycling class, an average of a minimum calories you can burn?
It really is completely dependent upon the effort you expend in class, and because it is unique to the individual, and the bike is there, every person has their own piece of equipment and can adjust the resistance on the bike to their own level. It's going to be dependent on that person. So no, there really is an average. I mean, you could say you can burn a whole bunch of calories in a class like that, but it really is dependent on the class being taught and the person's motivation to work hard.
You know what I think is really great is instructors like yourself, being a master trainer. Instructors for cycling are so open to any new person coming into class, and they set you up and show you how to work the bike and get you comfortable. So it's not like you go in and it's one size fits all. I mean, it is, but they teach you how to adjust your settings for everything to make it more comfortable for yourself. So you kind of get a little instruction before the class begins if you're brand new.
That's really important. That's really important as a new member of class to get to the class a little bit early if you can. And most instructors are there setting up their room and ask for some assistance in getting your bike set up. It's not rocket science, but it is really important for the protection of your joints to have a proper bike set up. And what we'll see is most new people come into class will have their seats lower than they need to be because they feel like it keeps them more comfortable. It's not an easy chair you're sitting in, and if you're not accustomed to sitting on a bike seat, it does get a little uncomfortable. So being a proper bike fit is really important for protection of your joints. And most of us will go to a lower bike seat because it feels like we're not sitting as hard since we're not accustomed to that little seat. And so we as instructors need to help people get their bikes set up at a point where their legs are almost fully extended and they're back far enough from the handlebars that their knees are bent at 90 degrees when they're at when their pedals are even on with each other and at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock if you're looking at a clock face.
Bethany, I also know some serious cyclers, and they have specific shoes and pants for cycling. So is that like common once you kind of get hooked on cycling? You get the proper wear?
It really is. It just becomes like the thing you wear when you cycle. Just like you put on running shoes to run, you put on cycling shoes to cycle.
Like your uniform.
But there really is a purpose to it. The padded shorts are the padding is really for friction, to prevent friction. Mm-hmm. But it does provide a nice little pad to sit upon on those little seats. So it really is a nice, and a lot of people
cushion for the tush.
A cushion for the tush. Yeah, you want to have, people think that loose-fitting clothing is more comfortable, but you really don't want to have that fabric bunching up underneath you when you're pedaling. Mm-hmm. Because talk about discomfort, yowza, it's discomfortable. It's uncomfortable. So you want to have nice, tight-fitting bike shorts with a comfortable pad underneath you to prevent friction and to give you a little something to sit upon. And the bike shoes are there because they're a rigid bottom surface. We don't want a lot of movement in your foot because the power chain, if you have a lot of flexion in your foot, you can actually, it can maybe overuse that area that's not used like in that manner. So keeping that rigid, hard surface on the bottom of your foot is key. And if you have a cleat, the cleat placement is key to click into your pedal so that you don't have that really tight stirrup around your foot, prevents your foot from falling asleep if you have a cleat. And some people with really big feet or really small feet have a very difficult time finding placement in the stirrup of a pedal without a cleat. So those shoes, and really, as you said, it becomes a uniform you wear when you cycle.
Perfect. So you want to suggest to everybody, if you've cycled after so many classes, it's a good idea to, once you know that
like I would say if it's something you like and you're going to do, go to class 2-3 times a week or once a week forever in your whole life and you know you like it, go ahead and invest in a pair of cycle shoes and get some cleats and definitely get a pair of cycle shorts because that will make a difference in your comfort in class.
Now, you talked about the different types of classes, and it depends on some instructors teach different ways and for different purposes. But what about faster? And as I see some people, they can go really fast, but is faster better, or would interval training be more beneficial?
Well, here's the thing. If you ever think about if you ever watch a cycle program like the Tour de France, or if you remember being on a bike and pedaling, think about one time you ever pedaled as fast as you could with very little resistance under your feet. You never see it outdoors,
right?
Ever, unless someone's on a fixed gear going downhill. Then they have to pedal really fast to keep up with their front wheel or their chain. But you'll never see anyone outdoors pedaling really, really fast with no resistance under their feet because essentially they'll be getting nowhere. So when you're outdoors pedaling, you put resistance under your feet with the gears you have, and you pedal fast enough to move as fast as you're comfortable. Indoors, the same thing applies. If you're pedaling really, really fast, then you're probably not pedaling with a lot of efficiency. And so I call this the effort equation, and the effort equation is cadence plus resistance equals effort. Cadence with no resistance or a high resistance and very low cadence are not going to give you the kind of effort you want to expend to gain a fitness response. So really fast pedaling with no resistance really should be taken out of your repertoire. Okay.
Good point. Very good point. Now, I also want to mention to everyone that you have done multiple things. The Swhinn Cycling Master Trainer, and also at different fitness conventions. So your name is familiar to a lot of trainers out there. And you've also published articles for IDEA and contributed to their water fitness committee. So can you tell us about that?
Water fitness is something that I think is so underutilized for athletic training, and it is an incredible environment to train with three-dimensional resistance and low gravity. And if I could get on my soapbox and shout one thing, and that would be to take your very talented athletic kids that are working so hard to achieve their capabilities in their sport and take them out of gravity for at least one day a week or 1 week a month or 1 month a year, and get them into the water and do sport-specific training in the water, take them out of the gravity, give them some resistance in three-dimensional environment, and help them maintain their ability to withstand the rigor of their sport.
You have a lot of good points. No, preach it, girl. You have a lot of points. A lot of good points. Thank you for all of that. Like I said, there's so many things that you've done. You've been in the fitness industry for 20 years. Now, you live in Georgia right now?
I do.
But where were you born and raised?
I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. I was. Jackson, Mississippi. And,
Southern girl.
Yeah, Southern girl. I went to University of Georgia and met and married my late husband, and I've been here ever since.
All right, Georgia girl. So I'm a Southern girl too. We have that in common, our love of the South and our love of fitness. So anyway, you are a triathlete also, and triathlons, or two-time, you've done 2 triathletes, right? I mean, 2 triathletes.
I've done 2 Ironman races. I've done a variety of other races. I tell you, and that's from indoor cycling. I was teaching my indoor cycling class, and one of my members came up and said, Bethany, I want you to do this triathlon with me. It's the first ever women's-only triathlon in Ackworth, Georgia. It was in 2004. And I said, I can do the run and I can do the bike, but gosh, I haven't swum in years. She said, Bethany, it's only 400 meters. You could do that. That's 16 lengths of the pool. I thought, okay. So I started training for it. And I signed up for the race, and she moved away. I never have seen her again. and I did my very first triathlon and won my age group and had a ball doing it and thought, this is the best thing ever. And in 2006, I did my first Ironman, and in 2008 to mark the anniversary of the day that we buried my sweet husband, I did my second Ironman, and that year training. I got to tell you, training for that Ironman probably saved my life because it's training for an Ironman is very fun if you have friends to train with, and I had two great friends who signed up for that Lake Placid Ironman and trained with me all year long, and just knowing that I had someone to meet several times a week to train with filled my weeks, filled my months, and filled up that first year after my husband died, and made such a difference in my life. And that race, it's very difficult to race with people in an Ironman because it's so long. I mean, it's a 2.4-mile swim and a 112-mile bike ride, and then you run a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. So usually you'll see your friends or people that you know at the beginning of the swim, and maybe you'll see them on the bike a little bit, maybe you'll see them on the run, but rarely will you see these people. And we all run and train and work out at different rates. And so I saw my friends on the swim when we started, and I saw their families when I came out of the water, when I started on the bike and started on the run, and I was ahead of them, and then my body started failing on the run, and I was walking it. And sure enough, one of my friends caught up with me at about mile 16 or so, and at mile 20 or so, the other friend caught up with me, and so three of us were able to finish the race, walk the race and finish the race together, which is very unusual. And it was just the coolest thing to finish that race with these two women that sort of got me through this, among other people, got me through this horrible year of mine, and finished that race, and my kids were waiting at the finish line. And what a great way to end a horrible year with something so finite, something so cool, and then to move on from there.
So all that training,
that was very cool. Yeah.
All that training is very therapeutic.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Even if you're not going through something so tragic, any stresses of daily living, running could be very therapeutic for that. So
yeah, I think training is great. Training is a wonderful way to get to to stay healthy, to stay stress-free, and to keep your sanity.
Yeah. When you are training for a race, how much does, of course, nutrition has to play a big part in training for anything. But what about for triathlons? I mean, you have to get serious about it.
You really do. You really do. Nutrition is the fourth discipline. Triathlon, of course, is three disciplines of swim, bike, and run, and nutrition is the fourth discipline. And people really have a disconnect there, because I think we are so caught up with the idea of exercise for body image or for weight loss, not necessarily exercise for the way it feels or to achieve something that is hard to achieve. And so the idea of putting food when you're working out is a hard thing to connect for a lot of people. But when you're training for endurance events, anything over an hour, any event, any activity that takes you for longer than an hour, you've got to have a replacement of fluids, electrolytes, and most decidedly calories. Without calories, your body will, instead of burning the carbohydrates you're taking in as calories, will start burning off its muscle mass. And that's never a good thing. It's not a good source of energy, and it will essentially cause some unfavorable effects. So you want to have those calories coming into your system so you can continue to access your fat stores and continue to work effectively.
Okay,
and that's a hard thing to plan. So you have to work. I recommend working with a coach and probably a dietitian to get that worked out. It's a tough one to work out, and it's a hard one to dial in, and every race is different depending on the heat and the terrain.
Good points. You're just so full of great information, and not only because of being a master trainer, but going through this 2 times, the Ironman triathlon. That's pretty awesome. So let me ask you more questions. What about training? I mean, for yourself, you've done it 2 times. How much time commitment do you give yourself if you're going to train again? And what about someone brand new? It's their first marathon, not even triathlon, but their first marathon. How much time commitment?
I believe in taking baby steps, first of all. I know people that have started with triathlon with signing up for their first Ironman. They've never done one before, and I find that to be an unbelievable commitment when you don't even understand the discipline of the sport. So I really believe in taking baby steps. Start with a sprint triathlon, and that's going to take you very few hours during the week, maybe 4, maybe 5, because a sprint is probably about a 3-mile run at the end, so you're probably doing maybe a 400-yard swim, somewhere between a 10 to 15-mile bike ride, and then finishing up with a 3-mile run. So that you could train for that as little as 4 to 6 hours a week. And then as your triathlons get longer, your training commitment gets longer. So for an Ironman, you might start out training, 5 hours a week when you start training, and it's going to build to 7 to 8 to 10 to 12. And some people can train for an Ironman in as few as 12 to 15 hours a week. I think toward the end of my training, I was going maybe some 20-hour weeks. It does become a little bit like a part-time job. So you do have to plan that time commitment. But look, I know CEOs that have done Ironman races, and I figure if they can plan the time, then most people can. You can plan, an hour and a half a day during the week, and then your long training on weekends. You can really work it out where you've got some good sound training and time commitments that you can afford, basically. And that's, I think, hiring a coach is really key when you're doing something as stressful as an Ironman race. And the shorter races, you may be able to find some training protocols online.
Oh, good point. Good tip. So, coach and a nutritionist are really good to have when you're training. Let me ask you this. Now, what about MP3 players, iPods? Are you allowed to have those during a race?
No, not during a race. People use them to train with because it certainly makes time go by, and the training time can be long and tedious. But no, you're absolutely not allowed to have anything in your ears during a race. But I did see someone at Ironman Florida with a old-time radio strapped around their neck. They were running with an old-time transistor radio strapped around their neck and running with it, and it was really pretty funny. But that's legal because it wasn't in their ears. You can have nothing in your ear during a race.
Okay, that makes sense. But that's funny about the old-time radio.
Isn't that funny?
Because I did see someone with an iPod running in a 5K before. So does that... They're not as serious.
I don't think they're as strict about it.
Okay.
I think that the people that are really, and I think that also the running races attract people. Like I've run half marathons and used an iPod, but I was not in the running for the win. The people that win the race were finished by the time I got to mile 3. Okay. So, so in that case, it wasn't about qualification for anything. I was just running the race for my own personal best and not to race the fabulous people that are usually in the front.
Well, I do want to talk. So you're always just competing against yourself, so to speak. That's what most marathon runners do. But I want to talk about your foundation because this is something that you were kind of competing for your friend, so to speak. So can you tell us more about your foundation that you started?
Absolutely. I started Ovarian Cycle. Our website is ovariancycle.org, and Ovarian Cycle's commitment, our mission, is to raise money to fund research into the development of accurate diagnostic tests for ovarian cancer. There is no such test, and as a result, ovarian cancer is the most lethal form of women's cancers. Mm-hmm. I had a friend, Debbie Flam, who was diagnosed in early January of 2001, and she almost made it 3 years before she succumbed to the disease. She was 43 years old. And to watch your friend die at a young age is horrible. It was horrible, and I wanted to do something. I was trying to think of a way to bring more people into indoor cycling, and I'm watching my friend go through this horrible illness. and the two connected to me, because what I know is people know exercise is important, right? They hear it all the time, exercise is important, but they won't make time for it in their busy lives, and I get that. We're very busy, very stressed, and we have a lot on our plate. But if you tell someone to walk for someone else or to ride a bike for someone else, they'll make time for it because that other person is more important than they are. So I thought, okay, let's combine these two things. Ovarian cancer needs money. The disease needs money. We need to fund research for the development of this test for the accurate early diagnosis of the disease, and we need to get more people into exercise. So I started a fundraising effort with a 6-week indoor cycle training protocol, followed by a 6-hour indoor virtual century 100-mile ride. And it's grown in the 7 years we've done it from, 40 participants to well over 200 participants, from 1 city to 5 cities. We've raised in excess of $640,000, which we give to Ovarian Cancer Research Fund, to Ovarian Cancer Institute, to the Norma Livingston Foundation, which funds research at the Birmingham, Alabama Research Center. So there's so much good happening here, and it's all because of each individual taking time out of their lives to train for 6 weeks, to ride for 6 hours. And in that training for 6 weeks, what we hope is that people will form a habit, and they will want to keep training and keep working out and keep riding bikes. And what I've seen in my 7 years of doing this is people have become indoor cycle trainers, they become triathletes, they become cyclists, they become members of clubs, and it's changed not only the lives of people who are undergoing treatment for ovarian cancer and future people who will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer, but it's changed the lives of those of us that participate in the event. I've completed 2 Ironman triathlons, but nothing is as emotional and as satisfying as being in the front of over 200 people on indoor bikes, some of whom have never ridden a bike, some of whom have never done more exercise than walking to the mailbox and back. But they're there for whatever reason, whether their friend, their wife, their mother, their lover is undergoing treatment for ovarian cancer. They're there and they're on their bike and they've ridden it for up to 6 hours. And to be in that moment with them as they finish that 6-hour ride and realize they've raised that money and done that event and finished that ride that they thought was inaccessible to them 6 weeks prior, and they did it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing. The whole foundation that you started is amazing. So you started in 1 city and now in 5 cities and growing.
And growing. We started in Atlanta. We've been in Birmingham for a few years. This year we were in Boulder, Colorado, Seattle, Washington, and Tallahassee, Florida. And we're growing. We have people that want us to do events in New York City next year, and who knows where else we'll be. But right now, this is one disease that needs our attention. Because if we can find the diagnosis for the disease, if we can diagnose it at its earliest stages, it's quite curable. Unfortunately, the symptoms mimic symptoms that women have monthly, and we tend to be busy in our lives and ignore them anyway. And if we don't, and they're vague, and doctors sometimes believe they're gastrointestinal rather than ovarian. So it's really important that we know the symptoms and that we look for them, and they are, again, very similar to what we have monthly. Sometimes a change in our bathroom habits, bloating, low back pain, that kind of thing. If it persists longer than 2 weeks, you need to go to your doctor and really demand some attention. And again, our website's ovariancycle.org with lots of information on it, and I hope people who are listening to this will take the time to go and look at it.
Absolutely. Ovariancycle.org. Don't forget that. Write it down. I just want to say thank you so much, Bethany, for your passion for fitness and your passion for your foundation and for ovarian cancer research. And thank you for your time here today and giving us a lot of inspiration and good tips on cycling indoors and triathlons. So thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, I want to ask if you could give our listeners one short tip on fitness, whether it be cycle or triathlons.
Yes, I have a great tip, and that is as you look toward the beginning of your year, I would really recommend that you go online and find an event for which to train, whether it be a 3K run-walk, whether it be a cycle, whether it be a triathlon. Find an event, because training for something will give you more motivation than training just to become fit. That's my tip.
Good tip. Good tip. Thank you, Bethany Diamond.
As we say goodbye, I'd like to remind you to take some time to relax, to reflect back on the success of your day. Enjoy that good, positive feeling of knowing you're doing everything you can to take care of your health.